Welcome back. In New York City, cultural institutions like the Bronx Zoo provide New Yorkers with opportunities for educational experiences. However, some argue that access to the park should be free. The organization Free Admission Campaign claims that due to leases, contracts, and state laws, these establishments must provide free admission to New York residents. Pat Nicholson, the founder of the Free Admission Campaign, joins me to discuss the possibility of free admission to the Bronx Zoo. Pat, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me back.
Now, I honestly love to kind of delve into this conversation because so many New Yorkers are familiar with a lot of these institutions, but unfortunately, sometimes people can't go due to the prices or maybe some of the days that are free, they're not available. So with that being said, can you just give an overview of the free admission campaign and why there's this push to have free admission in New York City?
Well, yes, a lot of New Yorkers do not know about their rights, our rights to be able to go. Free Admission did a petition online, and we had about 2,000 signatures, and across the board it was, I had no idea I had these rights. So clearly there has not been information disseminated about it. Free admission stems from a public-private partnership that started in the mid-1800s. That started with the build-out of the Central Park, and a gentleman by the name of Andrew Green realized that this was going to be a very costly production, and along with the philanthropists who wanted to exhibit their collections, came up with this concept and said that the only way New Yorkers would be able to come up with the sense of providing the financing for this was to provide free admission to it. So there's a reciprocity. The institutions have parkland, city-owned buildings, and they pay no rent. And in exchange for that, they have a responsibility to provide legislative responsibility to provide particular provisions of free admission. The Bronx Zoo is supposed to be providing it through 3 days a week.
Well, I definitely want to say thank you so much for sharing that because, as mentioned, a lot of people don't know that. And this is for all, not just the Bronx Zoo, this is for all. So we're talking about museums, just different areas in New York that have these institutions. They should be free. But today we're focusing on the Bronx Zoo. Can you expand on why there was this focus on the Bronx Zoo and, what they're currently doing?
Right. So the Bronx Zoo is celebrating its 125th anniversary. The legislation incorporating it was from 1895, but it opened its gates in 1899. The Bronx Zoo actually wasn't the Bronx Zoo. It's the negotiations, and the institution is the New York Zoological Society. The Neurological Society then became the Bronx Zoo. But over time, the New York Zoological Society has morphed into a doing business association called the Wildlife Conservation Society, and they've now become I'll call them the subcontractors to the New York City Parks Department, and they run and operate 5 different programs, which is why the notion of talking about the Bronx Zoo has some merit. Yes, it's the 125th anniversary, but when decisions get made for the New York Zoological Society, it also impacts the Central Park Zoo, the Prospect Park Zoo, Queens Zoo, and the New York Aquarium. So where the policies are in line with what the 3-day-a-week requirement is, it's terrific, but none of them are in line with what the 3-day requirement is by law.
Now, with that being said, I want to reiterate that the Bronx Zoo is only offering one free admission day per week, and as many New Yorkers know, that is on Wednesdays, instead of what you mentioned is the legally required 3 days. Can you explain how they're able to kind of get away with only offering that one day on Wednesday, and what is their justification for that?
Right. So getaway and justification are kind of curious words, and so in some ways what I think I want to say is these laws are 125, 150 years old.
Right.
Those folks who are now passing the legislation and having it passed may not know about what the laws themselves are about. So I'm going to give some credence to the fact that there's nobody getting away with anything, that everyone now, including legislators, really need to be informed about what the provisions are. So free admission now has sitting in the state legislature in committee a study bill in order to do just that, so that studies can be done of the 17 institutions, and it goes across all five boroughs, that would allow for the consolidation of all of the laws so that there is in fact one place where all the laws are, and from there negotiate what it should look like going forward, but at least to put it in a place where that conversation can happen. This should not be considered an adversarial bill. This is a bill that says, you institutions are having this reciprocity, you're living rent-free, you don't have to get up in the morning and pay your rent, so you owe us, New Yorkers, the ability to be able to have free admission. Let's find out what those terms are, and then let's figure out what that should look like going forward.
And just to clarify, this is Bill A03059B?
Correct.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Now, with that being said, what reason could the zoo be using to continue to charge people if they are, kind of operating rent-free? I understand that there's wildlife there's a lot of educational programs, so could that also be contributing to that?
Well, again, I'm going to start it from the perspective of I think numbers of people aren't informed about it. The bills have been passing basically just willy-nilly, that it's happened, so let's just keep it going. It's a funding stream that happens. It gets written into the budgets, and people, in a lot of ways, these are elected officials. They need to fundraise for themselves. These institutions have powerful people on boards. That's one component to it. The other component is there's the electorate. There's the taxpayers of New York who are not informed about what their rights are. So the campaign is trying to say to the institutions, let's make everybody start on the same page. Let's have it so that going forward we all understand what the rights and obligations are. And let's start out from the fact that these institutions in our parks are supposed to be park activities for New Yorkers, not institutions for tourists and visitors, although that's what they tend now to become more of. And start out with a baseline that says to the trustees and administrators of these institutions, you have an obligation first here, fill your obligation to the citizens of New York, and then figure out how you run your operation after that. But that's your obligation first.
And with that being said, I want to talk about, since it is in the Bronx and we're Bronx-based, how is this impacting Bronx residents?
Well, the statistics, I don't really have the statistics for the current ones. A lot of my research was done in 2019 before the pandemic. It was saying that there were 4 million visitors at that time that came to the Bronx Zoo. There were 4 million visitors that came across the zoos by the Wildlife Conservation Society's numbers. How much of that broke down to the Bronx Zoo was somewhere in the 1.8 million, that kind of number. It's a pretty substantial number. Who those residents are, we don't know, because they don't report unlike the Metropolitan Museum, who does, they don't report who the residents are, so we can't say what the direct impact is, except to assume that most of them probably are local residents who kind of use it as a park that they would like to go visit, and probably a lot on Wednesdays. And now the misfortune of it is, many of these institutions since the pandemic require that you set your date. You have to pre-register in order to be able to go to your to visit, which means that the notion of what these institutions were supposed to be, which was recreation and education, that's why they were set up, in order to be able to provide it to the city schools and to the city residents. It's now become something where you have to now set a time and a place, as opposed to just walking in and saying, I'm a New Yorker, here's my cultural card, I'm coming in, I pay my taxes, I'm paying for this. Hi, it's good to see you again.
Right. Now, just thinking about the future, how do you feel that the more people are informed about this and understand what right they have, how could that transform the way we view, institutions like the Bronx Zoo?
So if you go on the theory that when you wake up in the morning and you don't have to think about going to your wallet, and you then live your day not going to your wallet, you can do a lot of things. You don't have to think about them. You go out and you do them. If you have to think about your wallet, you have to say, oh, I better plan for that because I want to spend wisely. These institutions are supposed to be available to New Yorkers as if they don't have to go to their wallet, and shouldn't be going to their wallet. We are spending over $1 billion in subsidies every year in order to be able to. Free rent is in the neighborhood of $700 million a year. New Yorkers should not have to think about their wallet. They should say, this institution's in this park, I'm supporting this with my dollars. This is an obligation that they have to me. It's an obligation that they have. So you don't have to think about an obligation, you fulfill your obligations.
Now, what role do Bronx politicians and community leaders play in advocating for changes to the Bronx Zoo's admission policies?
Well, there is a Senator Rivera who has seen to the passage of these amendments in order to have it be 1 day a week. And what happened was there was a glitch, as I learned doing the research, that during the pandemic, But the state budget still would run. It would still give money to the institutions, including the Bronx Zoo, even though there were not amendments to the laws. So right now, there's a hiatus. The hiatus is you're not exactly a law, but you're not exactly not a law. So there is this kind of, well, but we're in the state budget, so, so that's fine. It's almost like we don't care what the law is. And I guess the point is that the campaign's trying to make is you should care what the law is, because the original reason for cutting it back from 3 to 1 day was back in the 1970s, where it was said that New York was going through a financial crisis. Well, there was no study, there's been no studies, there's been no research, nothing. It was a statement that Mayor Dinkins made. So if that's how you keep passing amendments, then that's not the way amendments should be passed, because New Yorkers are still being asked to subsidize without getting their reciprocity. So it's about fair play, literally about fair play.
Now, what do you hope to see for the future, just of this campaign in general? I think that already there's a difference is being made because people like me know, and now I'm going to tell people that I know. Right. What do you hope to see for the future of this?
Everybody out there, go call your call your legislators and say to them, please pass this bill, because again, it's a study bill. It will put the facts together. There's going to be a negotiation after that. Let there be a negotiation, but let New Yorkers know what it is that their money's being spent on, and be able then to own what the outcome is going to be. Right now, there's no ownership of anything, just this laissez-faire kind of, well, it's been like this for 150 years, let's just keep this sucker going.
Now, what can people do, or where can people go if they want to further support, this campaign?
Well, we have a website, NYERSfreeadmission.org. On there, it will direct people to what it is. We've proposed a certain kind of email they can send, or what they could call and say, to make it as easy as we can, so that people don't have to say, oh my God, I'm going to have to. Well, it's right here. Go right ahead and do it, and please do it.
Well, Pat, I want to thank you so much for joining us once again and kind of having this discussion to, educate New Yorkers and people of the Bronx of, what they deserve and what's pretty much their right in this city. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me back.
To keep up with the fight for free admission for all New Yorkers to the Bronx Zoo and other locations, please go to their website at NYERSfreeadmission.org. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open right after this.